Eli Holt had been running range flags at Kessler Canyon for 11 weeks, and he had learned one reliable truth about the place. When the crosswind came up the valley in the morning, nothing hit the plate. He was 19 years old, a lance corporal, the lowest-ranked person on the qualification line by enough distance to be almost invisible. His job was to pull the red indicator flags when a round confirmed center mass on the qualification target, a steel plate standing 2,300 meters down the canyon floor in the brown haze of a high desert morning. He had pulled those flags 11 times over 11 weeks. He had not pulled them today. 16 Marine Scout sniper candidates had come through Kessler Canyon for their final qualification course. Sergeant Major Brandt had told them on day one that the 2,300-meter shot in a canyon crosswind was the point where ambition met reality. He told them without apology. He was a broad man with a voice like gravel rolled in a tin drum, and he had been running this qualification line for 19 years, and he had seen what ambition looked like when the wind got up and the mirage stacked in the valley heat. He had seen men who called themselves shooters go home early. By mid-morning, 12 of the 16 had fired. None had confirmed. The 4 remaining candidates stood at the staging post with their faces composed into expressions designed to conceal that they had watched 12 men fail in 3 hours. The steel plate at the end of the valley had not moved. Brandt stood near the observation post with his hands behind his back and said nothing. He did not need to. The line said it for him. The maintenance truck had come in at 7:30, the same as every qualification morning. A battered white vehicle carrying the 2-person crew that serviced the range equipment between courses. Eli had barely noticed it. The driver, a heavy-set man named Cordell, was known to most of the crew. His partner that morning was a woman Eli did not recognize, younger than he expected for a range maintenance contractor, wearing coveralls with a Fort Kessler Range Services patch on the shoulder, her dark hair pulled back under a work cap. She had moved quietly to the equipment bay behind the observation post and spent the first 2 hours checking cable tension on the flag runners and writing entries in a service log. She did not speak to anyone. No one spoke to her. It was Sergeant Major Brandt himself who first noticed her moving. The 4th candidate had just stood from the firing position, round missed, and was walking back to the staging post when Brandt turned and saw the woman in coveralls crossing the gravel toward the rifle rack at the rear of the line. Her stride was even and unhurried. She was not looking at the rack with the expression of someone who had wandered in the wrong direction. She was looking at it the way a person looks at something they intend to use. Brandt moved to intercept. Maintenance crew stays behind the safety line. This is a live firing course. She stopped and looked at him. Her eyes were quiet. I know what it is, Sergeant Major. The tone was not insubordinate. It was not anything other than factual. But something in it slowed Brandt's next word before it arrived, and in that half-second, she looked past him to the valley, to the flag indicators, to the heat shimmer in the lower canyon, to the line of small orange crosswind markers, spaced at 300 meters from the firing position, all the way to the far plate. She studied them the way Eli had seen instructors study a problem before they explained it to the class. Her head did not move. Only her eyes did, working from the near flag to the far one and back. Brandt found his word. This line is for qualified shooters on a live course. Step back behind the post. She looked at him again. Something in her expression was patient in a way that had weight to it. How many rounds left in the qualification window, Sergeant Major? It was not a challenge. It was a question a person asked when they were doing arithmetic. Brandt stared at her for a moment. Then, and Eli would spend years afterward trying to understand why the Sergeant Major did not simply repeat the order, he said, 40 minutes. She nodded once, looked at the rack, and said, I'd like to use one of them. For a long beat, Brandt did not move. Then he stepped aside. Not because he believed anything would happen, because there were 3 senior NCOs watching from the observation post and a NATO observer from the Allied Qualification Exchange Program standing with a clipboard, and the mathematics of 40 minutes with 4 unused rounds and 16 failed attempts was a mathematics that had no good ending, regardless of what a maintenance contractor in work coveralls did or did not do on the firing line. He stepped aside, because sometimes you let a thing happen to prove that it cannot. She went to the rack and selected a bolt-action qualification rifle, the same platform every candidate had used, a 7.62 millimeter system, with a fixed scope, nothing modified. She checked the magazine with 2 practiced movements. She looked once more at the flags. Still, she did not look through the scope. She looked at the flags with her naked eye. And then she went to the firing position and lay down. Eli was at his station near the south berm, 60 meters from the flag runners, with a clear line of sight to the far plate. He watched her settle. There was no adjustment period. She was in position before most candidates had their breathing right. She brought the rifle up, found her natural point of aim in a single movement, and stilled. The valley was quiet. The crosswind flags at the 900-meter mark shifted right. The 1,500-meter flag held. The 2,000-meter flag bent gently left. She was reading all 3 simultaneously, and Eli could tell because her shoulders had not moved in 11 seconds. She was waiting for a window. Brant watched with his arms folded. The 3 NCOs at the observation post watched. The NATO observer stopped writing on his clipboard. The 1,500-meter flag straightened. The 2,000-meter flag shifted to match it. For 2 seconds, all 3 flags aligned in the same direction. She fired. The report came back off the canyon walls, and the echo had not finished when the steel plate at 2,300 meters rang. A sound Eli had learned to love in 11 weeks. A clean metallic bell note that meant confirmed, that meant center, that meant pull the flag. He pulled it. Nobody spoke. Brant uncrossed his arms. One of the NCOs at the observation post took a step forward. The NATO observer's pen was motionless in his hand. She had already worked the bolt. She did not stand. She was looking down the valley, past the qualification plate, to the far end of the canyon where another plate sat on a low earthen berm, a target Eli had never seen anyone address, a steel disc at what the range markers said was 2,610 meters. It was a record plate. It was the plate where the range certification record lived, a number that had been set years ago and had not been challenged since, according to Cordell, who told Eli things sometimes on slow mornings. Eli had never seen anyone fire at it during a qualification course. It was not part of the qualification course. She looked at it for a moment. Then she spoke, loud enough for Brant to hear. "Is there another round in the window?" Brant's jaw moved. Then it stopped. He was thinking something through. "There's time," he said. She looked at the flags again. She looked at the record plate for 3 seconds, the way a person measures a distance they already know. Then she looked at Brant. "Then let me finish." He nodded. She settled. The flags moved. She waited. Eli realized he was holding his breath without having decided to. The wind in the canyon dropped, not stopped, but softened. And in that soft moment, all 3 flags steadied, and the valley haze flattened out, and the record plate at 2,610 meters was the clearest thing in the world, for about 3 seconds. She fired. The sound traveled the length of the canyon, and the record plate rang. It rang differently than the qualification plate, higher, like a struck anvil, and the echo bounced twice off the red canyon walls before it faded. Nobody moved. Eli had let go of the flag runner. He was standing with his hand still raised from the pull, and he was staring at the far end of the valley, and he was not the only one. Every person on the qualification line was still. The 4 remaining candidates at the staging post had turned from where they had been standing. One of the NCOs had come fully out from the observation post onto the gravel. Sergeant Major Brant was looking at the woman in coveralls, who had already worked the bolt a second time, and was now setting the rifle back onto the rack with the same 2 practiced movements she had used to pick it up. She did not turn around. She set the rifle down, checked the safety, and stepped back from the rack. Brant's radio crackled. He answered it. His face did something Eli had never seen it do. It went through several expressions quickly and came out somewhere still. "Sergeant Major." The voice on the radio was the battalion commander, who had been in the observation post reviewing the qualification logs. "I need you to look at something on my tablet." Brant walked to the observation post. He was gone for 90 seconds. When he came back out onto the gravel, he was holding his cover in his hand rather than on his head, and he stood in front of the woman in coveralls, and he said her name. Not the name on the range services patch, a different name. A name that had the sound of a service record in it. Rank and given name, read carefully, the way a man reads something for the first time and knows it is not the last time he will read it. She looked at him. "The battalion commander wants to address the line," Brant said. She nodded once. That was all. The battalion commander came out of the observation post with a tablet in his hand and stood on the gravel in front of the firing line. He looked at the 16 candidates gathered from the staging post, and the 3 NCOs, and the NATO observer, and a 19-year-old lance corporal who had let go of his flag runner and was still standing with his arm partly raised, and he read from the tablet in a clear voice. He read a service record. He read the date of enlistment and the branch, and the qualification designation, Marine Scout Sniper, youngest woman to qualify, and the date of the record. He read the confirmed record distance. He read the number 2,610 meters, and he read the word confirmed, and he read the phrase 0 rounds wasted, and he read the engagement designation that told any person who knew what the words meant that the shot had been made under field conditions, not at a range, not on a qualification day, but in the kind of circumstances where missing meant something that could not be undone. He read the call sign. He said it clearly. Lion mark. The sound of it in the canyon was a different kind of sound than the rifle had made. It was not loud, but it moved. The NATO observer closed his clipboard, set it under his arm, and stepped forward. He reached into the breast pocket of his uniform and produced a qualification badge, not a fresh one that had been worn and returned at some point, and he held it out to the battalion commander, who held it out to her. She looked at it. She took it. She did not move to pin it. The battalion commander stepped back. 16 Marine Scout Sniper candidates rose to their feet. Not on an order. There was no order. They rose the way people rise when something demands it. 1, then 2, then all of them. And they stood on the gravel of the Kessler Canyon qualification line in the high desert morning, with their covers in their hands. Sergeant Major Brandt stood among them. He had not put his cover back on. He held it at his chest with both hands, the way a man holds something that reminds him of something. She looked at the line. She looked at the far end of the valley, where the record plate was still settling. The vibration in the steel not fully quiet yet. The echo of the second shot, still somewhere in the canyon walls, still moving. She looked at the line one more time. Then she put the qualification badge in the breast pocket of her coveralls, buttoned it, picked up her service log from the equipment bay, and walked to the maintenance truck. Cordell was already in the driver's seat. He did not say anything when she got in. He was that kind of man. The truck drove out of the canyon access road and was gone before the echo was entirely done. Eli Holt stayed at his station near the south berm for a long time after the line was cleared. The flags were still. The desert heat was coming up over the red rock walls and turning everything sharp and bright and close. He looked at the 2,300-meter plate, confirmed and still. He looked at the 2,610-meter plate at the end of the valley, still faintly humming. He thought about the 11 weeks he had been on this line. He thought about what a person looked like when they were the most capable shooter on a qualification range, and nobody knew it but the canyon walls. He thought about what quiet looked like when it was the kind of quiet that had put 16 trained men on their feet without a word. He picked up his flag runner. He went back to his station. He did not tell anyone what he had seen that morning, because he understood, with the particular clarity that comes to 19-year-olds on very specific days, that some things do not need to be told, they need to be carried. He carried it for the rest of his life.